Miranda? Okay, I'd like to bring the meeting to order and ask that roll be called.
Boudreaux,
Here.
Feldman,
Here.
Hall,
Here.
Holzhauser,
Here.
Tyra,
Here.
Wagenbach,
Here.
Wisdom, Young.
Here. Wow. No worries.
You'll be okay. Be okay.
I'd like to ask everyone to stand for Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board will now move on to public participation portion of the meeting. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, this concludes the public participation portion of the meeting. The board will now move on to the action items. So I guess I'll have a few comments here. I'll start, and I'd like to hear from everyone on the matter. So just for some context and some background, shortly following, well, kind of leading up to the election, but certainly shortly following the election, I was contacted, reached out to by some of the public, but some of the new members asking about the training center and the fact that obviously the board had a lot of discussion and conversation about it over a year ago in terms of how it got to be the size that it is and the amount of money we were going to spend, et cetera. And there was some interest in, is there an opportunity to do it to a point where it was a little bigger and we could host meets, have a little revenue flow through it, that along those lines. And so I did inquire about having this come to the meeting or talk about it a little bit in April. But at the time, the board, its makeup, the complement, there wasn't an interest, there wasn't enough, and the board hadn't changed out. And so there wasn't a good enough idea. So I've been spending a lot of time over the last several weeks trying to get smarter about, is this even a possibility for consideration? So we've looked at a lot of different options because, and again, in April, work started happening at the site, and the thing was going to eventually have a shelf life, point of no return, if you will. So this morning, as a matter of fact, I finally got a number that that everyone, when I say everyone, so I'm talking about civil engineer, talking about the construction company, some administration maybe, but a number that I could be able to talk about or present and someone say that they could actually do it. So in order to make the building bigger so that it would have a 200-meter track, which would get an additional basketball court, but it would be open for meets and host tournaments. What we would have to do is shift the orientation of the property. So the facility, right now it's planned to border up against Cedar Hills. So in order to, but the driveway is in the way. So in order to make the building fit but be longer, it would have to be on the other side. So right now the building is set to be against Cedar Hills, and the parking lot is set to be against the drive that comes off of Legion Hall. The option would be to flip it, so to speak, and have the parking lot border Cedar Hills and the building border the drive. Now that's less advantageous because there's a big dip there, valley, so there's some dollars involved in that. But we do have that length, if you will, that north to south. So if that were to come to fruition, have support, that would be just shy of $4 million to do that. The other possibility, but one that is still kind of getting ferreted out a little bit, is that the building could stay where it was originally planned to go, and that the school district would be able to acquire some property south of current drive off of Cedar Hills. Talked a little bit with the property owner. And if that were the case, then it also would be an opportunity to perhaps someday put an extra drive off of Cedar Hills directly into the high school parking lot. But and that would be about $500,000 less. So I'm obviously happy to talk about it, take questions. Again, I'd like to hear from everyone, but the idea is to propose to, maybe I'll do it that way. Maybe I'll make a motion, see if it gets seconded, and then we have discussion on it. That's the way it works anyway. So I would like to make a motion to approve the option for the Dunlap Training Center that allows the board to spend up to an additional $4 million to expand and possibly move the training center. And I need a second on that.
I'll second that.
Okay, now I'll open it up for discussion.
I'll go first, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
Dr. Dearman, what's the administration's recommendation?
Myself, Dr. Adrian, and Mr. McKenzie have spoken about this. We do not recommend the flip. It was referred to changing the location of the building down towards closer to the ravine. You're going to have a 17-foot high retaining wall is what I've heard, a 28-foot building on top of that. So the bottom of the building would be about halfway up the tree line. It's going to be unsightly. That's really the least of the concerns. The larger concern is, we're looking at $193 a square foot under current construction. We're going to $493 a square foot. Steve Kerr with Moore & Kerr said he had no private client that would ever do that because it's just cost prohibitive. I don't see it. We don't see it as a good use of taxpayer dollars to do the flip. I am intrigued, as Dr. Adrian and I have been talking today. He's been literally today in conversation with that landowner. If we could get that 10 acres, I think that would be a win for the district. Anytime you can acquire adjacent property, I think that's a good thing. We could then put that entrance that would go straight into the high school parking lot, which I think would be beneficial. I think in the interim, this building was always designed that it could be added onto. I know there's a cost associated with that. My suggestion or the recommendation from the admin team is continue on the current course, build the building as it is. Even if the landowner came tomorrow and said, let's do this, things move so slow with schools, it's going to take 6 months or more to finalize this deal. And we've got the construction company sitting there idling, if it can even get done. But our recommendation is to continue the building as is, or start the building back up as is, allow Dr. Adrian, myself, Mr. McKenzie to pursue this purchase of property, see where that goes. And then also, if we do get the property, and then there is a discussion of building a new road and possibly adding on to the training center, look at alternative methods to fund it other than taking that money out of reserves. For example, the county school facility sales tax. We could use that, it's capital, to help fund this and not take the money out of reserves, but it would take some time to get that done. You don't just do that overnight. So that's the administrative recommendation.
So I have another question, Tom. You indicated that you were reached out by the new board members after the election, and you've been looking at this for 5 weeks. Can you tell me if there's been meetings with the administration, if there's been meetings with the construction company? Tell me what has happened during that time, because I got an email on May 9th, it's the first time I've heard about it, right?
Yeah.
And just need to understand that. And also, I think I got a call from you today. It might have been at 3:30. I'm in meetings all day, so I wasn't able to take that call. So let me know what's happened, because when we had this board meeting and we approved this, we knew at the time we had we did it because based on financial obligations. I have a chart here that shows exactly where we're going to be. And this, Mr. McKenzie, we're going to be in a deficit this year again, is that correct? And have been for the past how many years?
2 or 3, I don't remember. In the education fund, across all funds.
Correct. So we're looking at, and I had Mr. McKenzie run numbers for me today. Total operating funds, and I'm just going to go every fund here, the 4 operating funds, $47.5 million in reserves in 2021, 2022. What's projected out, and I know 5-year projections there, you're projecting, right? 2024, 25, we're at 38.7, and this is based on current projections, right? What we see today moving forward. We're not increasing things, right? Looking forward. We'll be at 30 million at the end of 2030. We need to keep 6 million in reserves. We've got headwinds ahead. So I guess I'm just extremely disappointed that this happened. We've had this done. And just, Mr. Feldman, how many meetings and conversations have happened in the past 5 weeks?
Yeah, so, let me.
And with who?
Yeah, so, let me make a couple comments, and then I'll get to some detail on that. Also, Teresa, you know, I just want to play off a couple of the comments that Dr. Dearman made. Because he mentioned the taxpayer dollars, I want to mention that, feel obligated to mention that. You know, I felt good about the decision for the $8.5 million. You know, when we were talking about it almost being 10, 1 point, I was good with any of that. I feel better even about more like 12 and with the extra 4, just because there's an opportunity to actually over time see some revenue from it. So, I mean, if, you know, one over the other, I'm more, I guess I like the bigger number from that regard more than I do the lesser number. And then the other is, and I did list it as a possibility, and that's why I worded my motion as a possible, because I know Dr. Dearman mentioned it, I mentioned it, and he added on to it about the land thing. You know, the only thing I'll say about the land is we've been talking about land acquisition and land around here for certainly the 5 years I've been on the board, and there's never been anything ever about it, no movement ever. So I'm buoyed by the fact that someone wants to talk to us about it, but I mean, the timing is a little interesting. That, and I mean, there's nothing like a fire to realize that you need water. You know, about the reserves, the one thing I'll say about reserves is, you know, I think reserves are good to have. I think we should be thankful that we have reserves. But reserves should not be, I don't think, seen or thought about as a regular vehicle to fund operating expenses. And so, admittedly, although these are different buckets, we're talking about capital and we're talking about, and I just mentioned operating expenses, but you're talking about reserves. Money is money, dollars are dollars. So when you spend money, you take away from one pot or the other. So it may in fact be that what you're doing is perhaps shortening some amount of length of time that you're able to pull from reserves. But, I mean, there's no one that could suggest to me that a good practice or good policy is to just be taking away from reserves with any sort of frequency or planned thought out into the 5 or 10 year period. I mean, that's just not good policy. In terms of who I've talked to or when I've talked to them, I mean, I've made a lot of, I've been on one teleconference meeting, maybe on I'd have to look at my calendar, just in the last week-ish. One, I've been on a call, I was alone, but there was, Dr. Dearman was on that call, civil engineer, Steve Kerr was on that call, someone from Estes was on that call. So there were at least 4 or 5 people on that call. And then otherwise, it's been a lot of individual conversations to try and get smart about what the number could be or how it could look.
So you were having these conversations, okay. I'm just totally confused by this, Tom, because I had no knowledge that you were going out and something that, I mean, to me, and maybe Dr. Dearman, it sounds like you were included in that meeting. We should have known.
I'm listening, I'm just looking at the date.
I didn't indicate you weren't listening. But Dr. Dearman was in it as well. I would have, it's just my, I would have hoped the whole board would have known about this. This is a surprise to us, or at least to me. I can understand what you're saying about reserves, Tom, but we've been using reserves for the past 4 to 5 years, and we're going to continue to do so because our expenditures are more than our reserves, or more than our revenue. Anytime you have expenditures greater than revenue, you've got a problem, whether it's in your personal life, corporate life, or in the school district. So yeah. I'll let somebody else speak now.
Well, and a couple things. One, I think I'd have to look up the date, Tim, but I mean, it was a week ago or something. I touched base with Tim briefly on it. This was the soonest that I could get. Prior to last Wednesday, half the board wasn't even in standing with the board. So I'm not sure, I worked on this as fast as possible. I'm only bringing this tonight, and I scheduled this special meeting tonight ahead of next week because, again, there wasn't anything appreciable done with the current location and the current plan for the last 11 months. But then April came, and suddenly there was a lot of activity up at the spot. And so for me, I didn't want to have good money go after bad, and I didn't want something to be done that wasn't going to be in keeping with, what the board wanted to do long term. So I needed to act. I think I acted as fast as I could and got this meeting on as fast as I could, so not to wait the extra week next week. So I moved. I got to tell you, I've been working, very hard to even get a real number this morning.
So it's pretty much done in the dark, right? I mean, you have been working on this?
I've talked to him about it a little bit.
It's a potential Open Meetings Act violation, but.
Well, not just if you have 2 people. I mean, we could rewind.
These are major funds that we're going to.
They are, and we can rewind a year and a half and 2 years and how it was done initially.
I wasn't part of that.
Nobody was.
I knew as much information as you did.
Right, exactly.
But, when we're in.
No, I agree. I've seen the numbers as well. Mike, can I ask you a question? So if this, this is obviously a big dollar amount here, $4 million. We'd like to have in our reserves, we always hear the number 180 days cash on hand, right?
Correct.
we still have that, right?
Yes.
If this $4 million is approved and budgeted for, we still have beyond that 180 days?
Now, right now, if you look at our operating funds, we talk about 180 days, it's, usually about your operating, funds. And I know this only because I was looking at it this afternoon, normally, okay, I know this much detail on the top of my head. But we have about $52 million in annual expenses in the education, operations and maintenance, which is our buildings, and transportation buses. And so 52 million. So we need about 26 million, and you measure that on June 30. Because we have cash basis, most of our cash comes from property taxes. So there's times when we have way more money than that. But we're talking about on June 30th, that's when you need to have 180 days. You just got money from the state for your June tax receipts, and or not the state account. Anyway, so $52 million. So we would need to have 26 million or so in fund balances at that point. We're scheduled to have, I think, like 38, 39 at the end of this year. So we have about 12 million that I would consider our true reserves at this point.
In addition to that 180 days?
Yes.
So just,
or, however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
Your 12 million is not a cushion.
I got you.
For that 180.
okay.
You need 180 days to get the best rating from the state, which helps your bond rating, things like that.
Right, okay. So this 4 million, again, it wouldn't put that in jeopardy per se. I mean, I'm
No,
just
I
saying.
mean, I personally would prefer, I like the word money.
Yeah, right.
So, anytime you start spending that down, it makes me uncomfortable.
For sure.
So,
And I appreciate that. You do a great job on behalf of our taxpayers, and that is, one of our main jobs.
but yeah, you could spend it, but I guess it's simple.
Looking at how it's currently set up, and again, we didn't have a whole lot of say in how this whole initial thing was designed and planned with initially. So really all the feedback I received from the public when we did that was, that's great, but why don't we do it this way? Why don't we do it a little bit bigger where we can have a 200-meter track, where we can host events? And I've just on my own, not in the dark, but just people I know, I've reached out to, I know admin at Galesburg, I know folks at Mount Zion, I've talked to people at Muhammad, to a person. Every single person I talk to, they say, do it right. Do the 200 if you have the funds. They don't know our financial, situation. But the ones that didn't do it, that was their own regret. So as a board member, I want to do what's best for the district, the community, and our kids. And I don't want to look back 5, 10, 20 years from now and wonder why we shortcut it. When if we have an opportunity, we have the funds without going below that threshold, I'm open to discussing the opportunity to do it better and bigger. Because I think talking to other people that have been down this road before us, it completely, like in their words, it changed everything, right? We know we're short on space as it is, so this is going to relieve a lot of that tension with our other facilities, and really help our kids. It's going to benefit thousands of kids in the district and even our community down the road. And I think if we shortcut it, we're just doing ourselves and them a disservice. So I really think it's worth looking into and considering.
I want to make sure that we hear from everyone. So Nick, I'm going to start calling on people that raise their hands, just go around the table, cover this half of the table. People can jump back in, but I want to hear from everyone at least once. So go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, so I think a couple of things I would start with is obviously as a new board member, I wasn't involved in any decision-making or discussion regarding the present design or current facility that was voted on by the previous board. I think coming into this, obviously this is a big agenda item right out of the gate for this new board. I do think, looking at the building itself, it's one of those situations where I agree with what Mr. Tyra is saying in terms of, have we looked at this carefully in terms of, these buildings are 30, 40-year buildings, have we, in the previous board, did we really look at these options and kind of, decide what was best, or was it kind of just done more rapidly? I don't know, wasn't privy to that. I think the decision tonight focuses more on, basically whether the current design optimally serves the students and the parents and other stakeholders involved with the building, rather than whether the athletic center is needed at all. That's already been decided. So I think it's worth exploring. Certainly, I think, the idea of bringing events here and perhaps driving local commerce, if there's any opportunity for revenue for a bigger building to offset some expense of this building, be it maintenance or even paying for some percentage of the building over its 30-year lifespan, I think is probably worth exploring. Yeah.
Thanks, Nick. Youssef?
Yeah, so my understanding, in the past boards, especially when they were building the schools, for example, they always kind of looked on the smaller side of things. Many times when a newer school is built, a few years later, the school's already at full capacity. So instead of really planning ahead 10 years down the line, it seems like previous boards unfortunately just looked just in that short period of time. And I think, just like other board members mentioned, having a facility that's going to be lasting decades, from now, we want to make sure that's large enough for all the students, and all the sports that we can accommodate. And then why not have something that's going to bring more revenue as well? If it is, I don't know if we have a number of how much revenue it'll bring per year. That would be, good to know down the line. But anything that you can always have revenue, why not? From my understanding, the way it's built right now, there's not going to be any revenue coming in. And when I was campaigning for a while, what I could say is there was either two things people were saying. They disagreed with having a sports complex at all, or if we have to have it, build it big enough. Because they weren't really, I understand we're saying, $4 million sounds like a lot, but when you're already spending $8.5 million, you might as well put a little bit more and make it the right way than just having it too small where it's not really going to have that much benefit to it. So that's really what, and I understand what you're saying about, like, you like to hoard the money, make sure that, but also for the public, it doesn't look good when we're always hoarding.
It's not a good word. I said,
Yeah.
hoarding is not.
Well, to be clear, he said that he liked to hoard money. He wasn't speaking.
It was not a good word.
Yeah, just no, I guess the public, they kind of see it as hoarding money sometimes. It's all not you, when we have so much reserves and we're not really, when we're asking just for a little bit more to make it the right way, I think that we should go with it. And then also, why build small and keep adding on to it when we could just do it the right way up front? And then we're done with the project. Instead of a couple years down the line, okay, maybe we can add a little bit more, We want to get the project done and focus on newer projects in the future, whether it's more schools or whatever we have to do. So that's just my opinion on it.
Tim?
I don't know how you started it, but you acted like this board discussed this, how we should build this thing. And that was not on this table at all. The size when this thing was designed, that all came up under the table, and then we came up for a vote.
Right.
Well, we're talking to Tim.
No, I'm talking either
We're talking to
one.
Andrew. The other thing I'll say is, I know at this table, I know what we agreed to, and Andrew and I were both here, and we both voted in favor.
That was after it was planned.
Right, but in the open discussion, though, we did talk about, with the Estes guys and everyone, having the bigger track and all that stuff with the Estes guys.
There was very little discussion on the board about how this building was designed.
Yes.
And then it just came up for, here we go.
Yeah.
So who's paying for the additional design fees? Are they charging us for this?
That's all in the number.
What you're talking to them now for? That this is are they charging us more for what you're doing?
Well, there's gonna be some redesign, they're gonna have to redesign some of it.
What you've done so far, the last 5 weeks, have they charged us?
No,
Okay.
because they were doing it thinking that there might be more business to be had, so there's no billable hours in the time that I've talked to any of these people.
Okay, and you two both voted for it. Why didn't you say something at the time rather than voting for it? Why didn't you say, we shouldn't vote for this, let's hold off and check this out a little more?
Actually, all three of us, I think, voted for it.
Yeah, okay, all three of you.
At the time. Well, so for me, I will say that, at the time, a lot of conversation really with just one board member, and, that board member did not feel that he could get, enough support if it was anything over $10 million. And so I actually thought that something was better than nothing at the time. And I said it earlier, that I felt good and I still feel good about my vote. I just feel better about our ability to maybe do something more today.
Okay.
That's me.
So I'll answer for me, but I can't remember exactly what was said at the board meeting, but I do remember some folks being up there talking and some back and forth with some of our board members. And I did interject, and I believe I made a point that I would support doing something bigger, including a 200-meter track. I know I made that clear to the board member that was kind of running that project. It was clear we did not have the votes at the time to go that route. I remember a $12 million number being talked about, but that got scaled back to 10 and then 8.5. So I did voice my opinion. I think I did publicly, and I know I did, one-on-one conversations, but at the time, it was like, well, we'll take what we can get, if you will. But I didn't. All my feedback from the community has been overwhelmingly in support of something larger where we can host events, where our families don't always have to travel to go to such events. And then it also frees up other facilities for our kids to train. And
Okay.
you don't have to keep them till 9, 10 o'clock at night for practice when they're at school the next day.
All right, I don't think we need to see some revenue examples of what you're talking about. It's not big enough to have a host of audiences in there, right? So how are you gonna make revenue if there isn't audiences there? So,
Well, there's a couple of different ways to get revenue. You can get-
I don't want to talk about it now. I just want to see it on paper. We need the notes, the proof of it, don't we?
Yeah, but I'm not telling anyone that they should vote on this based on some amount of revenue. I specifically don't want to go down that rabbit hole, because you're not gonna find a check for $4 million at the bottom of it. So there could be a lot of conversations about that, and I don't know what would make people comfortable. But in talking to some of these other facilities, it's a wide range. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of, over 100 grand numbers, but I'm hearing a lot of, 50 grand numbers, and a lot in between. And to
We
your
just like
point,
to see
though-
something.
Well, yeah, sure, I could share that information with you, but that is not, I don't want anyone to, I am certain that you will get revenue from this, based on tournament fees and just things, not even spectators, just from other schools that will, or basketball, youth leagues. We will get revenue in that way, but I don't want anyone up here making a determination because I said this thing is gonna get this kind of money. I don't wanna
I'm
make it
sure you're
about
not
that.
gonna pay for it or even close, but were you saying something, Teresa?
There's going to be expenses associated with this too, so we need to see the P&L statement based on what the revenues would be versus what our expenses are. If we host events, we're going to have janitorial, we're going to have security, so there's a lot of expenses, plus the utilities that go along with this and the maintenance that go along with the building. So we need to take a look at that.
Well, we wouldn't be hosting anything that isn't profitable, Teresa. So we wouldn't be,
Well, we need to see the numbers.
well, I'm just telling you that they're just gonna be, we
Will it
wouldn't.
be profitable? That's what we need to understand.
Well, what I'm telling you is that if there was a proposed event and the event wasn't going to cover its cost, it wouldn't go on the schedule. Right now, it's just more space.
So if you take the total operating cost do we have this, Dr. Dearman, Mr. McKenzie? Do we know what the operating expenses are going to be for this new facility on an annual basis?
Not on the new, we have projections on the old, so you could extrapolate
Because
that
that's
out.
a piece of it too, right there.
Yeah,
The
it
operating,
is.
and
It's
to
about
understand,
$25,000 a year with a guess on the utilities.
how much?
25,000
25 a year in
on the
utilities?
original
Well,
structure.
I-
Add 7,000.
Put it
Hey,
to,
I wouldn't think it would go up a whole lot, maybe to 30.
my recommendation would be put the numbers together so we can take a look at it and understand whether or not it would be.
I mean, but those kind of numbers, you're talking about just, I mean, HVAC numbers from square footage.
I'm talking about operating,
I will say-
all operating expenses.
I believe it was said by Dr. Dearman that,
I gotta get to that.
that our, just the naming rights with Fortress Bank was gonna cover the utilities annually, right?
That is correct.
And I will say, talking to other communities that host events and have facilities like this, and the ones that went small have since, some of them have upgraded, so they could enjoy that revenue aspect of it and just other things that come along with the bigger sizes. In terms of where that money comes from, it's not really from the gate. I go to some of these over the years with my kids and other places that have facilities like these. It's the teams pay entry fees. There's not a lot of seating. You're almost standing up against the wall and watching these things. That's really how those work. It's not like an auditorium or even bleachers typically for training centers like this. So it's mostly teams will pay an entry fee to come in. But anyways, that's just.
Okay, I had a couple more things here. So I did talk to the neighboring property owners, farm manager, and they acted like they had no interest in doing any more favors to the Dunlap Field District. So I don't know if they're leading you on or if they really did get
No,
something.
I've actually spoke to landowners twice. They're interested, so.
They had already been offered 50 grand an acre, I think, and they're turned that down.
Who did?
I think they'd been offered 50 grand. No?
That's not what the farm manager said, boy, the two offers on that land. We made one 10 or 12 years ago for a transportation hub, I guess, and the village paid one for the water tower.
Are you talking about across the street?
I'm talking about the Lockers Trust, which it does include that triangle across the street.
Right.
We're talking the Lockers.
Going south, toward the cows.
For the south, yeah.
That's not what I got from them, but anyway, that's a pie in the sky thing. This is just, it seems like it's a reckless action to do something tonight because the administration doesn't support it and it's not proven yet. So I think you're in the wrong, but you'll pay for that with the taxpayer. They'll answer to you.
One thing I'll say about reckless act, I think since the new board's the ones dealing with this issue, it was a reckless act for the old board to have voted on it instead of waiting until we got sworn in to vote on it.
The reason I didn't vote for it was I didn't think that little area was big enough.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I didn't vote for it.
Yeah, but I'm saying the board as a whole, that should have been something that brought up with new instead of let's do it right before election.
Well, it was a year ago, I mean, that we
Yeah.
voted on it, so it's not that, I mean, this board didn't, or the old board didn't vote, me and Teresa and Andrew didn't cast our ballots last month for this. I mean, this was, let me just put it in context, that was like it was 11 months ago when we did that, so I do think we could have had some more conversation. I'll say one thing about that too, Tim, that, you know, there will be, I mean, I'm not pulling back my motion, and I do know that Mick wants to say something, but I'm not at this point willing to pull back my motion, but there is a fair amount of work that has to be done just in some of the drawings and the redrawings. And so it's not like they're gonna be, not like I've been operating in the last month, which is, you know, some sort of super time sensitive. This is still, it'll be time sensitive, but I mean, if something, you know, you call it a pie in the sky, but if something happens with the land or there's some opportunity to do something a little less reckless, I think we'll have a little bit of breathing room for that as well to consider, but that's gonna be up to if Dr. Adrian can do anything or not, so.
That's all I have, but I think you should consider delaying this. It's just not appropriate tonight for the first meeting of this new board to make this action.
Thank you.
But it's up to Tom, I guess, isn't it?
Okay, Mick?
I come at this from a couple different angles. One, I would share, I have had lots of conversations with folks over the years about the previous board, the board before that, the board before that. And one of those things that is offset is why didn't they? For example, why didn't they build the administration building bigger so that all of the admin people could be in one building? Why didn't they, right? I think this is an opportunity that still exists right now where we can have a facility, and we all know because it's the first one in the area like this, right, for a high school in our area, to be a signature facility that's done right. Not done expeditiously, not done to try to spend only a certain amount of money because that was the amount of money somebody felt like ought to be the limit on it, as opposed to the board looking at what the facility would offer for not only the students, but also in a manner that does generate revenue. The one thing I think we can all agree on is the current design doesn't offer an opportunity to generate revenue. This other design would. And I know I just talked to a athletic director in a neighboring community here who talked about what it's like to go to these track meets at a 200-meter indoor facility. They were charged $300 for their girls team in the morning and $300 for the boys in the afternoon. There were 30 teams each. And so that facility made 18 grand in a day. Now, I'm not saying that's a standard. I'm not saying that you do that every weekend, but at least you have the opportunity for that. Talked to another one who mentioned the AAU tournaments for basketball in the summer. Again, an opportunity. It isn't every day, but it's more revenue than we're going to make otherwise, right? And so I think that because there's an opportunity to generate revenue, because it is a signature building that we could do the right way, and because I think in what the constituents have said to me, which is they're fully supportive of this building if they just do it the right way. And those are the words that have been shared with me time and time again, both before the election and afterwards. Can you guys do anything? Is it too late? Those words were shared with me. Is it too late? And it seems to me that this is an opportunity now to step back and say, you know what? We do have the money in the bank, and maybe this time we just do it right. And so that's my position on it.
Other people's comments?
So time is of the essence, essentially, with these construction crews.
Well, time is of the essence to get going because they have to work on the drawings, et cetera, and the pause, the delay and waiting. We can't just have these guys sitting out there. So it's going to cost us one way or the other. So we can't just say, because they're at a point where they're ready to do permanent, I don't want to say damage, progress. They're ready to make permanent progress with the current configuration and the current building. So we have to come away saying, hold it. Now I'm saying, just talking off the top of my head, that I mean, it's not like that, again, I'm not pulling back my motion, but if something presents in the next days and even weeks, I don't think you're going to see a lot of things that can't be undone in the next several days and several weeks. But what will happen is if we don't move forward, I mean, we are going to incur costs, and there will be progress that's made that can't be undone. So what I don't want to do is cost the district, even more money on top of that. And I do this, a side thing, but I wrote it down. I want Miranda, and I know Teresa was just wondering aloud, but I do want you to make a note, and maybe I'll ask Dr. Dearman to follow up with it. If there's been any violation of the Open Meetings Act, that should be investigated and reported back on. Just because it was said here in open session and on the record, and I don't believe that to be true, but we'll make sure that that's not the case, Teresa. Any other comments or discussion?
I remember the time you brought up the dock being hazardous, or what do you call it? What word you called it?
I was asked not to say it again, so if you remember it, you can share it.
I remember.
I can,
this is taking care of your problem and theirs, but then you moved from that way over the other side to make an attraction for this the second civic center here.
Well, I think I backed off. I think that I may have talked about the DAC a couple times, but I've since been assured that things, I don't believe that the DAC is gonna, suddenly be vacant. I think that I think that Andrew made the point, I think you might not see kids have to be there till 10 o'clock at night, they still might be, but I think the DAC is gonna get used still quite a bit. I know the soccer coach, I don't know I haven't talked to the men's soccer coach, but the women's soccer coach just happens to live down the street from me, and he loves the DAC in the bad weather, so he's a big fan of it.
I'm not asking for a big explanation. We're really here to teach education, not sports. So we're forgetting all about the education portion of our job.
I don't think we're
When
forgetting
we're
about.
spending money on the sports.
Well, we're actually going in the next 10 minutes to go work on a new school,
I
the
understand.
education piece, so I think we can do both at the same time, actually.
So we've had a motion and a second. I just asked for clarification in that Kendall's here. What is my direction to them?
This is Eric.
Eric, sorry, Eric. To pursue the flip or continue holding while we research this possible opportunity Dr. Adrian's working on with the purchase of the land and current configuration extended.
Yeah, my motion is to pursue the flip and move forward with the flip. And if in the meanwhile, you guys can, get something done with the other, let me know ASAP, and that's why I mentioned it being a possibility.
Okay.
So to be clear, you're talking about two concurrent paths.
No,
You want them to
no, let's stop a minute. Let's stop and reset. There's one motion on the table. And the motion is to approve the board to spend up to an additional $4 million on the Dunlap Training Center, which includes possibly moving and the expansion of the facility, okay? And if you want to, and that will take into account being able to reorient the site, flipping the building, get working on those drawings to get that done, and then it's fit. In the meanwhile, if Dr. Adrian, not in this motion, is able to come up with something that, we have to, because there is $500,000 potentially, give or take, maybe a little more than that to save, then that can be revisited pretty quickly. But the motion, as it sits, is encompassing to be able to do the flip and the site reorientation.
And the orientation of the aesthetics of it, we don't care. If the aesthetics are terrible, like you said, on the one wall so tall and above the trees, just so you know that.
I mean, if aesthetics were the main concern, it wouldn't be on the back corner where it is. I know we're a little landlocked, but there are trees there. I mean,
I think you have an understanding what it looks like when you get rendering, right?
yeah.
That'll be too late.
What's that?
That'll be too late.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna call the question.
I got a question. Dr. Dearman, how much is it costing us on a daily basis because we have halted this from the contractors? I know they all have subcontractors that have contracts.
$2,000 a day is what I've been told.
Yep, that's correct.
Do you want a roll call vote?
Yeah, there's been a motion and a second, so it's a roll call vote.
Bergeron,
Yes.
Feldman,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Holzhauser.
No.
Tyra, Wagenbach,
No.
Young.
Okay, motion carries. I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor say aye. Opposed?